Alright, in problem number 3, let's assume that you've totally forgotten everything that I've taught you, and I ask you to graph the square root function on a quiz. Well, we've got our calculator here, and our calculator can help us out. Okay? So, if we take our square root function and enter it into y equals, so we've got negative square root of x. Now, the square root, notice that the x is the only value underneath the square root. Well, on your calculator, your square root starts at a parenthesis and stops at a parenthesis. So since this plus 4 is not underneath the parentheses, we need to close the parentheses on our calculator. So then if we add 4, excuse me, we've got our equation. Now if we hit graph, here's our function. And now it looks we're gonna need our vertex. So we start counting. Looks like 1, 2. Looks like it's either 3 or 4, but it looks like it's x equals 0. So let's go to our table of values. So we go to our table of values, and again you might need to scroll, but we wanted to go to x equals 0. And look, 0, 4. Well, 0, 4 is a point, so looks like 0, 4 could be the start of our square root function. Well, on our table, look what happens right above it. We have an error starting at -1. Well, remember, we're taking the square roots of these numbers. So if this was under a square root, this would be the square root of -1. And we said the square root of -1 was a non-real answer. That's why it's coming out as an error. If you take the square root of -2, can't take the square root of a negative, that's an error. Square root of -3, that's an error. All these values up here are going to be errors. So we need to find the numbers that are actually real numbers. The first one being 0, 4. So for our x and our y, 0.04, and that's actually our vertex. And knowing that's our vertex, now you can say, hey, hk, our h is 0, and our k is the 4. And you can start remembering what we learned in the earlier part of the lesson. So now what are the other nice square roots? Looks like 1 is a nice square root. 1 gets us 3. Now the square root of 2 comes out to a decimal. We probably don't want to plot that. So what's another nice square root? Oh, 4. So the 4 is going to turn into a 2. Okay? So you can get your values from your calculator, or you can plug these values in. Plug in 0, square root of 0 is 0, -0, which is just 0, plus 4 is 4. Plug in a 1, square root of 1 is 1. That 1's going to turn negative, so this is -1 plus 4 is positive 3. Plug in a 4, square root of 4 is 2. That turns into a -2. -2 plus 4 is positive 2. So now we can graph this. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, since it's negative, we know this thing's going to be heading downward. And let's see if that happens. We got the point 1, 1, 2, 3. Looks like it's heading that way. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And here we go. Our function is heading downward. Now, when you go to graph all these square roots, make sure you have an ending point on one side and an arrow on the other side, because it only keeps going one direction. It stops on the other side. Okay? I will take off if you put an arrow on both sides. Okay? Now all we need to do is our domain and our range. So this is x, this is y. Our vertex is the point 0, 4. X's are getting bigger. Our y's are going down, they're getting smaller. So there's your domain and range. Okay? So if we look at the last one, let's just do that on the calculator. So let's get rid of the negative. This is x minus 5 plus 2. We graph. Looks like this is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe 5, 2, maybe 5, 3. Let's go to the table of values, but it definitely looks like it's at 5. And there we go. So our table here, X and Y, this is at 5, 2. Next nice point is at 6, 3. Next nice point after that is at 9, 4. So let's plot that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. 6 is up at 3. And then we have to go one more. Let's pretend it's right here. We're up at 4. So there is your graph. What's your domain? What's your range? Domain is X, range is Y. And your vertex is the point 5, 2. X is getting larger, and Y is getting smaller. Oops, no it's not. Y is also getting larger. Y is getting bigger, it's increasing. Y's are going up. Okay? So, there you go.